causes some backlash. Well, we count ourselves out simply because of our background, but what do I mean as background? It comes to multiple different things. The most common is your testimony. In other words, how you arrived at this point in your life. Andrew shared with us in class this morning that he was able to share his testimony with somebody he was working with. That's our background. It can be used as a tool. It can be used as something to reach others. It's our testimony. What you've went through, what you've learned, situations that made you grow, situations that forced you into adulthood. Make up your background. Make up who you are. Make up what's in here. What has God done in your life to cause you to serve Him unconditionally? That would be your testimony. To serve Him without any caveats, to serve Him without any exceptions, but to serve Him and come willing, ready to go at any moment's notice. Instant, in season, and out of season. That is our testimony from God, because, Brother Brunson, there's things God's brought you from that you don't ever want to go back to. There's things God's brought me from that I don't ever want to go back to. But those things that He brought me from don't disqualify me, and they don't disqualify you. And they don't disqualify you, and they don't disqualify anybody else. Our background is powerful. Our testimony is powerful. The miracles that have taken place in your life are powerful. They do not hold us back. But that's just the beginning of what I mean when I say your background. The next part of your background is your personal life. Your family, your wife, your kids, your extended family, they all have an impact on us. They've all had some sort of situation that has impacted our upbringing, our background, the influence, whether good or bad. Some of us don't have the best families. Some of us don't have the best households. Those who come from broken homes or not so great households have an easy to use ammunition to count themselves out as quickly as they can. That's not what God has for us in our life, though. And it's not what God has for those who come from a broken situation or a broken home or a broken household. We weren't put in that situation to use it as ammunition to not do anything. We weren't put in that situation to use all those issues, to use all those circumstances of my mom's not there, my dad's not there, I don't have any money, I grew up poor, I grew up with nothing, I'm on my own. We see it as a deficit. We see it as something that holds us back. We see it as something that just puts us in the back and says, no, I'm going to count myself out. Statistically, you would be correct. But God's not about statistics. Jesus isn't about statistics, and neither is the church. And He really doesn't care about the statistics that you brought through that door. And neither do any of us in here as you come through that door. The statistics you bring with you has nothing to do with where you can be taken. Has nothing to do with where you can go. So I just want to share with you, don't let any of that background hold you back. Let your testimony catapult you forward into what you are meant to be, because God never said because if you come from a broken home, you can't spend time with Him. God never said if you came from sin, you can't spend time with Him. God never said any of those things. Those are things that you and I put on ourselves. Those are things that you and I put in His mouth. Those are things that we tell Him, no, you can't use me. My mom don't even talk to me. You can't use me. I just lost my job. You can't use me. I don't measure up. God's saying, what are you measuring to? Last I checked, He didn't pull out a tape measure. He didn't pull out a ruler. He didn't pull out something to guide you by as you come through that door. Nobody's scanning you as you come in there. I know we're scanning temperatures now, but there's not one at those doors. Our background means everything to Him. There's going to be people you reach that I can't. And there's people that I can reach that you can't. Why? Because of our different backgrounds. I don't have the best ability to talk to veterans that are going through suicide. Ryan may be able to talk to a veteran that's dealing with that because of his background, because of his experience. We're not to be counted out because of our background. Those are the typically obvious things people look at to determine your background and your testimony. The one you forgot about mentioning here, you probably didn't even think about it, but is your professional life, your career. Isn't this just the carpenter? Isn't that just the plumber? Isn't that just the janitor? Isn't that just the office administrator? Isn't that just the trash guy? Isn't that just the food delivery guy? Isn't that just the carpenter? Our backgrounds tend to speak for us, but they do not have to define us. Mark chapter 5, verses 25 through 34. I'm going to read these for you. And a great crowd followed him and thronged about him. And there was a woman who had a discharge of blood for 12 years and who had suffered much under many physicians and had spent all that she had and was no better, but rather grew worse. She had heard the reports about Jesus and came up behind him in the crowd and touched his garment. For she said, if I touch even his garments, I will be made well. And immediately the flow of blood dried up, and she felt in her body that she was healed of her disease. And Jesus, perceiving in himself that power had gone out from him, immediately turned in the crowd and said, who touched me? And he looked around to see who had done it. But the woman, knowing what had happened to her, came in fear and trembling and fell down before him and told him the whole truth. And he said to her, daughter, your faith has made you well. Go in peace and be healed of your disease. For 12 years she dealt with that, right? Most of us know that story. But everyone knew her diseased background for 12 years. Everyone knew what was wrong with her. Everybody knew her diseased past. But she finally made up in her mind and got radical and said, I don't care about my diseased past. I don't care about my health issue. I don't care what anybody thinks around me. I don't care whatever's going on around me. My background sure ain't going to hold me back because I'm tired of dealing with this stuff. But at what point do you get tired enough to crawl to the feet of Jesus and just touch his garment and say, if I could just get there, all will be well. Stop letting your background hold you back from everything. Stop letting who you were keep you from your healing. Stop letting what you've done keep you from the future. She had every chance to just say, no, he's busy. All those people are around him. Nobody wants me to go up there. He don't want me to touch him. I've been bleeding for 12 years. I ain't stopped bleeding. It's weird. She said, no, I'm just going to go up there and touch his garment. Even though everybody around me that I'm crawling through knows my diseased past. Everybody I'm having to walk through knows me, Andy. Everybody I'm having to walk through has seen me fail at this before. Everybody I'm having to walk through has heard me say I'm going to do it right this time. Everybody around me has an expectation already that I'm going to fail. Everybody already has a preconceived idea of what my background is. But finally, you're going to get tired of bleeding all over the place. Finally, you're going to get tired of all that and say, isn't that just the carpenter? Isn't that just the trash man? Yeah, that's just me, but I need a healing. Yeah, that's just me, but I'm tired of dealing with this. I got to get radical. I got to get something inside of me that said, I'm going forward. Because Brother Brunson, I'm tired of bleeding. Everybody knew her disease past. She knew she could have a second chance, no matter what her background looked like. No matter what your background looks like, you have a second chance. You have a second opportunity. And I don't get caught up thinking this is just for people that just got in here or are just in the church or just finding this out, because all of us at one time or the other, or right now, is letting our background and our past determine what we're going to do next. Mark chapter 5, verses 35 through 36. While he was still speaking, there came from the ruler's house someone who said, "Your daughter is dead. Why trouble the teacher any further?" This is after he healed the lady with the blood. "Why trouble the teacher any further?" But overhearing what they said, Jesus said to the ruler of the synagogue, "Do not fear, only believe." There is no room for fear in the house of God. There is no room for doubt in the house of God. There is no room for fear in your house at home. There is no room for fear in your family at home. There is no room there. There is no room for it. If you keep making room for it, other things are going to creep in. You keep making room for fear, depression's going to creep in. Suicidal thoughts are going to creep in. When you make room for other things besides Him, stuff starts to fill in those gaps. Stuff starts to fill in those places in your mind. You know your diseased background better than any of us. You have the opportunity to erase that and move forward, or let it still control you. Whether your diseased past was yesterday, a week before, or you had those thoughts this morning, do not fear, only believe. Because it's not welcome here. And I suggest you would do the same thing in your own life, in your own home, that you would say it's not welcome here. Fear is not welcome here. Depression and anxiety is not welcome here. It's not welcome here. It's not welcome here. The biggest hindrance in someone's life right now is fear. And I challenge you to look that fear in the face and say, "I'm not afraid, but I believe." Jesus said, "Do not fear, only believe." But what's holding you back? What thoughts in your mind are holding you back? What situation? What do you think you can't get past? The people around this man said it was too late for his daughter. Said it was too late and not to bother Jesus. Too many saints of God listen to those negative naysayers around them and avoid the prayer room where the real answer is. They're in a situation, and the ones around them are like, "Man, you've been praying for that for 9 years. Just give it up." Jesus ain't listening. He ain't hearing you. If he was hearing you, something would have happened by now. Well, she dealt with it for 12 years. This guy had the opportunity to just look at him and say, "You know what? He is busy. I'm just going to move on. My daughter just died. I need some chance to mourn. My everything just died at home. I need some chance to mourn." But Jesus said, No. Don't give up yet. Don't give up yet. Mark 5, 37 through 39. And he allowed no one to follow him except Peter and James and John, the brother of James. They came to the house of the ruler of the synagogue, and Jesus saw a commotion, people weeping and wailing loudly. And when he had entered, he said to them, "Why are you making a commotion and weeping?" They probably want to look at him and say, "You really asking that right now? That's how it's going to be today, Jesus? That's what it is. You're going to throw one of those out there, huh? Okay. He said, "The child is not dead, but sleeping." They probably looked around and said, "I ain't blind. I got good vision. Even if I got glasses, I got better vision now. She's dead, Jesus." But there was no doubt in Jesus' statement. And there certainly wasn't fear. What he said was pretty radical, though. It was pretty out there. Obviously, the people, I can only imagine their response. Yeah, but if you're looking for a miracle, you're going to have to get a little radical. And if you're afraid of being radical, you're going to have to shake that off and move on. Because if you're going to have radical situations changed, you're going to have to start acting like a radical person and live for a radical God. Radical, pray a little while. Fast every now and then. Come to church every time the doors are open. That's radical. Matter of fact, it's kind of weird. I do it. Most people would say that's radical. That's simple. But for most, church would call that radical. Coming up here every time the doors are open. Oh man, I got things to do. I worked all day. Not my Saturday, don't touch it. And after church, I'm looking forward to lunch. But God's going to have to see something radical to break through your situation. Because He's not afraid of your situation. He's not worried about your situation. He's not intimidated by it. But He's waiting for you to give up that intimidation. He's waiting for you to break open that fear. And He's waiting for you to get a little radical. We want our baby saved, right? I want mine saved. I'm going to have to get a little radical as a dad. And I'm going to have to convince and show my children why church isn't an option. I have to convince and show my children that there's nothing that's going to let them miss on a Sunday. But today, it's pretty radical if we do that. It's pretty radical if we say, no, you can't miss that Sunday because you got a game. You can't miss that Bible quiz practice because you have a game. And you can't miss these things because our household church is not an option, because I want you to be saved. Not only do I want you to be saved, but I want to show you that you're not missing out on anything out there. We got young people leaving at the droves as soon as they can because they feel like they're missing something. As soon as they jump out that youth group, I'm good, I'm going. Because they are convinced they're missing something. What are we missing so much out there? What is it that you've convinced yourself so much that it's worth giving up everything for? Because there's decisions you're going to make once you leave that you can never fix, that can never go back to the way it was. It may sound radical from just the preacher up here. Of course, the preacher's radical. Of course, he's going to tell his kids it's not an option. Of course, his kids have to be there. He's the pastor. Of course, they're going to be there. Yeah, of course they're going to be there because I made the choice for them to be there. It's got nothing to do with being a pastor. It's got nothing to do with being up here. I want my baby saved. I want your baby saved. But it's going to take being radical in a radical world, in a radical time. Our teenagers today deal with things I didn't deal with as a teenager. But constantly we teach our kids that church is an option. Church not being an option is radical. But how do we know the voice of the Creator? By being radical. I don't want to say it, but I felt like God really wanted me to, so I'd be more in trouble with Him if I didn't. Stop missing church for secular functions, aka sports. We wonder why they leave as soon as they can. It's because we have shown them that church is an option. But church is not an option. It can never be seen as an option. I challenge us to become radical, to make those decisions, to be weird, to be different, to be okay with being different, and to stand out. All you got to do is come to church now to stand out and be different. Do it. Mark chapter 5, verses 40 through 42. They just told him that your daughter's not dead, and they laughed at him. Well, when they laughed at him, he put them all outside, and he took the child's father and mother and those who were with him and went in where the child was. Taking her by the hand, he said, "Little girl, I say to you, arise." And immediately the girl got up and began walking. She was 12 years old. And they were immediately overcome with amazement. My thought is, if they mock him when he gets radical, what are they going to do to you and me? If they mock the one that performs the miracles, that gives the powers for the miracles, what are they going to do to you and me, Andy? How are they going to mock me and you when you decide to come every time the doors are open? It's not going to sit well with everybody. People are going to think it's weird. But that's where miracles take place, is in a radical moment, in a radical situation, with a radical God that's looking for somebody to become radical and get out of their comfort zone and come out of their skin. If they mock him, what's going to be different for you and I? I'm going to close here. Sister Sherry can come and play. Mark chapter 6, verses 1 through 3. He went away from there and came to his hometown. His disciples followed him. And on the Sabbath he began to teach in the synagogue. And many who heard him were astonished, saying, "Where did this man get these things? What is this wisdom given to him? How were such mighty works done by his hand? Is not this the carpenter, the son of Mary and brother of James, and Judas and Simon? Is that not just the carpenter?" Jesus was just a carpenter. That was his background. When he began his ministry, he was just a carpenter. When you begin your ministry, when you begin your walk in God, you're just the office administrator. You're just the plumber. You're just the electrician. You're just the trash guy. You're just the delivery guy. That's your background. But when we begin to forget about our background, is when people are going to look around and say, wait, whoa. That was just so-and-so. Where did that come from? That was just, what's his name? Where did that even, how? Andy? No, not Andy. People are going to have those thoughts. Sister Sandra? No. She just sings. There's no way she's going to go up there and, no. Courtney? She's too young. There's no way. Isn't she like in the 9th grade or something? Is she just in school? Not Jaden. She just started coming here. Why her? No, it wouldn't work that way. That's what people are going to start to say when we make the choice to become radical. Because when we become radical, that's all they're going to think is about your past. That's all they're going to think is where you came from. How did you get here? How did you get to where you're going? How? How did you accomplish that? You just look at him and say, I gave everything to God. I became radical. I started going to church. I started going to the youth services. I started going to the hyphen services. I started going to prayer. I started reading the Word. I immersed myself in this. I said, forget about everything else. I said, forget about all that. Because I'm okay if people look at me and say, doesn't he just take calls? Yeah, I do. But I got a God that's way bigger than me. And it's got nothing to do with my background. Because I'm not defined by who I was. I'm defined by who He is. I'm defined by where He can take me. You are defined by where He can take you. If everyone would stand. His background of being a carpenter didn't matter. And it certainly didn't stop him from performing miracles through the power of God. Your background cannot stop you. When these things begin to happen in your life, you begin to notice the favor of God hit you. That's when you realize the commitment paid off. The dedication paid off. Coming to the church every time the doors are open pays off. When they come to the front and they pray in the altars, it pays off. When they show their children this is not an option, it pays off. When they show that everything is in this, that everything is in these altars, that everything is in this Word, it pays off. But until you get radical, it stays the same. Until you decide to step forward. And to come in these altars and say, God, I'm tired of bleeding all over the place. I'm tired of always being afraid. I'm tired of always being hurt. I'm tired of being depressed. I'm tired of being suicidal. I'm tired of thinking there's nothing left for me. I'm tired of thinking that way, God. And God's saying, immerse yourself in me. Immerse yourself in this word. Immerse yourself in a relationship with me. It does not matter where you come from. If you immerse yourself in Him, you will be made new. You're baptized in Jesus' name. You come up a new man, a new woman. That old life is gone. You're not missing anything out there. These altars are open. God chose you in spite of your background. God chose you knowing where you came from. He knew who you were from the get-go. There was nothing He's worried about. There's nothing He's concerned about, Andy. There's nothing He's concerned about, Jaden. There's nothing He's concerned about. He knows you. He knows where you're at. But He's saying, immerse me. Immerse yourself in me. Immerse yourself today, church. Jesus, I pray right now, God, as we come forward to these altars, Lord, that we would make the decision to immerse ourselves in You. God, we give our everything to You. My will, my way is not that important, because my way keeps getting me in trouble. My way hasn't saved me. My way is pushing my babies away. My way is pushing my family away. God, I want to immerse myself in You. I want to become radical. I don't care what anybody else thinks anymore. I don't care what I've done, where I've came from, because You can make it new. God, help us. Help us to realize that You chose us in spite of our background, that You chose this time and this day in spite of coming from a broken home, in spite of coming from a broken household, a terrible situation. In spite of all that, You chose me. You chose me, God. You chose me. And it's time I choose You. It's time I choose You.